The early sunlight stretched long shadows over the outdoor range at Ridgecrest Valley, as Commander Ethan Ward stood near the edge, quietly observing recruits working on their marksmanship. Gunfire rolled across the open grounds, each shot marking another attempt by young soldiers trying to hit targets set at different distances. Ethan had spent more than 15 years running training programs at various military installations, and as a former Navy SEAL commander, he understood exactly what separated an average shooter from a great one. He'd watched countless recruits cycle through, each with their own background, ambitions, and level of natural skill. Plenty arrived eager to serve, though only some showed immediate talent, while others couldn't land a shot on the closest targets. But this particular Wednesday, something stood out. At Lane 7, a young woman was firing with striking precision. Her posture was steady, her breathing timed perfectly, and every round struck dead center. What caught Ethan wasn't just her aim, it was the way she moved, a style that hinted at training far beyond what civilians usually picked up. She looked to be in her mid-20s, short brown hair pulled back simply, dressed in standard civilian shooting gear, and she didn't seem to know anyone around her. Most trainees arrived in chatty groups, but she stayed on her own, totally absorbed in what she was doing. Curious, Ethan stepped closer, watching her pattern. Every bullet hit with methodical accuracy, and the smooth speed of her reloads suggested years of repetition. When she finished, she placed her weapon down calmly and studied her target through the scope. Not one shot had drifted outside the bullseye. "Impressive work," Ethan remarked as he approached. She lifted her head, surprised by his voice. For a moment, he caught something in her eyes, a hardened depth that didn't belong to a casual shooter. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, her voice edged with an accent he couldn't quite pin down. "I'm Commander Ward," he introduced himself. "I run the training here. Mind telling me where you learned to shoot like that?" She hesitated, fingers brushing a small scar on her left hand. "Just practice, sir. Lots of it." Ethan nodded, though his instincts disagreed. After years in uniform, he'd grown skilled at reading people, and everything about her suggested a history she wasn't sharing. "And your name?" he asked. "Lena," she replied, then quickly added, "Lena Carter." As the morning went on, Ethan found his attention drifting back to her. Lena moved through each drill with the confidence of someone who'd done it thousands of times. Her handling of every weapon was flawless, and without a word of instruction, she seemed to understand protocols only trained soldiers normally recognized. During a break in the training cycle, Ethan struck up another conversation with Lena. She mentioned she'd only recently moved to the area and had joined the civilian shooting courses just to keep her skills sharp. Whenever he asked about her past, though, her answers drifted into vague territory. Talk of bouncing between different places growing up and learning to shoot from her father. What threw Ethan off was how she reacted whenever he slipped military jargon or tactical terms into their chat. For a split second, her eyes would flicker with recognition before she caught herself and pretended she had no idea what he meant. After lunch, the class shifted to a tougher challenge that blended timed shooting with obstacle work. This portion usually separated casual shooters from those who were genuinely trained, since it demanded accuracy, conditioning, and tactical instincts all at once. Lena breezed through it. She flowed across the course like someone who had spent years navigating combat drills, her movements sharp and smooth, her timing better than many of the military recruits Ethan had coached. When she wrapped up the run, she didn't even look winded. "Nice work out there," Ethan said as she wiped down her weapon. "I try to stay in shape," she answered lightly, though he noticed a faint tremble in her hands. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan grew more certain that Lena wasn't who she claimed to be. Her skill set was too refined, her reactions too instinctive, and her knowledge far deeper than anything a civilian course could teach. He'd trained enough special operations personnel to recognize the signs. So, later in the day, he set up a course designed to push even seasoned operators to their limits. Multiple targets at varying distances, rapid decision-making, and advanced shooting demands. Most participants struggled, some giving up entirely. But when Lena stepped to the line, she carried herself with a calm, focused confidence that Ethan had only ever seen in elite units. The buzzer sounded, and she moved through the course with professional efficiency, engaging targets flawlessly, using cover with textbook precision, executing maneuvers that required years of experience. By the end, the entire range had gone silent, staring at her in disbelief. She immediately tried to brush off the performance. "Just got lucky," she murmured, avoiding Ethan's eyes. But he wasn't fooled. Everything she'd shown came from high-level military training. The real question was why she was hiding it, and what had brought her to a civilian range in the first place. As the crowd thinned out and people packed up, Ethan walked over to her again. She was stuffing her gear away quickly, as if rushing to disappear. "Lena," he called. "Got a minute?" She froze, then looked up with guarded eyes. "Is something wrong, Commander?" Ethan studied her expression, the tight jaw, the subtle shift of her hand toward her gear bag. "I've been doing this a long time," he said quietly. "I know real training when I see it." Color drained from her face, and for a moment he thought she might bolt. Instead, she slowly straightened and met his stare head-on. "I'm not sure what you're implying, sir. Your shooting, your movement, the way you read a situation, those aren't civilian habits. You've had professional instruction. Special operations level, if I had to guess." Lena didn't speak, but the conflict in her eyes was unmistakable. She looked like someone who wanted to tell the truth but didn't dare. "Listen," Ethan continued gently. "I'm not here to cause trouble. If you need help or just someone to talk to, I'm right here." For a long, still moment, Lena didn't move at all. Then, so slightly it was almost missed, she shook her head. "I should get going," Lena murmured as she slung her bag over her shoulder. She headed toward the parking lot, and Ethan called after her. "Lena, if you ever want to talk, I'm here most days." She hesitated at his words, but never looked back. After a brief pause, she kept walking until the fading light swallowed her silhouette. That night, Ethan couldn't shake her from his mind. Something about her, her stance, her movements, even the way she handled a weapon, nudged at a memory just out of reach. Once home, he opened his laptop and started digging through old military archives, searching for anything that might help identify her. As a former SEAL commander, he still had access to certain classified systems, and he used every tool available. Hours slipped by as he sifted through service records, mission logs, and training rosters. He was about to close everything down when one image hit him so hard he froze. A photograph in an old special operations file showed a woman who looked strikingly like her. Same eyes, same posture, the same sharp focus in her expression. The only differences were longer hair and the hardened look of someone deep in combat. The name beneath the photo read, Sergeant First Class Lena Carter, U.S. Army Special Forces. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he scrolled through the rest of the file. She'd served in an elite unit conducting high-risk missions across hostile regions. Dozens of commendations marked her record, naming her one of the most capable operatives in her entire group. But the file ended abruptly 2 years earlier, stating she was missing in action and presumed dead. Ethan leaned back, mind racing. If Lena Carter from the range was the same soldier, then a woman declared dead was quietly resurfacing at a civilian shooting facility, under her own name. Questions piled up. How had she survived? Why had she been written off? And what exactly was she running from? The next morning, Ethan arrived at Ridgecrest Valley far earlier than usual, hoping she'd come back. After spending half the night examining her file, he felt both impressed and deeply uneasy. Her service history painted a picture of someone who had operated in some of the deadliest environments imaginable: hostage extractions, covert strikes, high-value target eliminations. Her combat skills and language training and tactical ratings were listed at the very top tiers. But during a classified mission 2 years prior, her unit had been ambushed. Almost everyone had been killed, and Lena had vanished in the chaos. With no body found, the military labeled her MIA before marking her as presumed dead. Ethan waited for hours, but there was no sign of her. He began to fear his questions had scared her away for good, and that thought bothered him more than he expected. She felt like someone who might desperately need help. Then, just after noon, her car rolled into the lot. Lena stepped out slowly, hesitation all over her posture. She surveyed the area cautiously before heading toward the range, as though checking for danger. "Wasn't sure you'd come back," Ethan said as she approached. Setting her gear down, she met his eyes with a tired honesty. "I almost didn't." They stood there quietly, both aware that yesterday's conversation had shifted something between them. Finally, Ethan spoke in a low voice. "I know who you are." Lena's body tightened instantly, her hand drifting toward the spot where a hidden weapon might rest. "I know your service record, your unit, and what took place 2 years ago," Ethan continued, "and I know the world believes you died." Her eyes flicked around the range, clearly assessing exits, distances, and risks. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, repeating herself quickly, almost reflexively. But Ethan pressed on, his voice steady. "Sergeant First Class Lena Carter, 75th Ranger Regiment, attached to JSOC, officially killed in action during Operation Silver Dawn." The moment Ethan said the operation's name, Lena's carefully controlled facade cracked. Her shoulders dipped, and he finally saw the weight she'd been carrying alone. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If they find out I'm alive—" "Who's they?" Ethan asked softly. Lena scanned the room again, then seemed to make a choice that would alter both of their futures. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Ethan guided her to his office in the main building, a small space lined with old military plaques and training manuals. Once inside, he shut the door and switched on the white noise generator he reserved for sensitive discussions. "It's secure," he assured her. "Whatever you say stays here unless you tell me otherwise." Lena sank into the chair opposite his desk. For the first time since he'd met her, the confident, composed exterior slipped away. She looked worn out, scared even. "I don't know where to start," she murmured, brushing a hand through her hair. "Start wherever you can," Ethan said gently. "I've got time." She sat in silence for several long seconds, staring down at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. Operation Silver Dawn was supposed to be a simple extraction. We were sent to recover a captured intel officer from a compound in Afghanistan. Straightforward, low risk. Ethan gave her a small nod, urging her on. But when we arrived, everything was off. The intel was either wrong or intentionally sabotaged. Instead of a single hostage, the entire place was crawling with fighters. They were ready for us. They knew we were coming. Lena's hand shook as the memory resurfaced. My team, my friends, Dylan, Vargas, Dalton, men I'd fought beside for years, they were cut down one after another. They died because someone set us up. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly. He knew that survivor's guilt all too well. "I should have died with them," Lena continued, her voice cracking. "I took 2 rounds and fell into a ravine. They must have assumed I was dead. When I came to a couple hours later, the compound was empty except for the bodies. Ethan leaned in. How did you make it out? I crawled for miles until I reached a village. The locals hid me from enemy patrols searching for survivors. I was unconscious for weeks. Once I finally recovered enough to think clearly, I realized something was very wrong. She stood and began pacing, her steps controlled, her training visible even in distress. I tried reaching base, tried contacting anyone, but every single attempt gave away my position. Enemy units showed up immediately. That's when I understood. Someone in our own chain of command was feeding them information. Ethan felt ice settle in his chest. You're saying there was a mole in your unit? Not just my unit, she said firmly. Someone higher up. Someone with access to mission briefs and live comms. It's the only way they could have been that prepared. Ethan swallowed hard. Betrayal within the ranks was one of the worst possibilities. And if she was right, American soldiers had died because of treason. So you stayed dead because going back meant getting killed by your own people. Lena nodded. I spent months digging for answers, using contacts from my years in special ops. What I uncovered... She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, worn notebook filled with coded notes. There's a network, Ethan. Corrupt officers, defense contractors, foreign agents. They're all tied together selling intel and weapons. My team stumbled onto their operation during Silver Dawn, and they wiped us out to bury it. Ethan flipped through the notebook, recognizing several names and operations. If her information was accurate, this was a massive national security breach. How many people know you're still alive? Until today, a couple of villagers who sheltered me, and maybe a few black market contacts who helped me disappear. I've lived off the grid for 2 years, gathering evidence and trying to figure out who I can trust. Ethan closed the notebook and looked at her carefully. So, why tell me? I mean, for all you know, I could be part of it. Lena gave a sad, tired smile. I checked you out before ever stepping onto that range. Your service record, your reputation, the people who served under you. Everyone says the same thing. You're one of the good ones, Lena said softly. And honestly, I'm exhausted from running. I need help, and I think you're someone who can actually give it. Ethan didn't answer right away. He sat there absorbing everything she had laid out. With his background as a SEAL commander, he had contacts spread across intelligence circles and military branches. If a conspiracy this big truly existed, he might be one of the few who could help unveil it. What exactly do you need from me? He finally asked. Someone with your clearance who can get this information into the right hands, she explained. But more importantly, I need someone I trust to watch my back. These people have already killed to cover their tracks. They won't hesitate to do it again. Ethan nodded slowly. And what's your end game? What are you trying to accomplish? Lena's stare sharpened with resolve. Justice for my team. I want the people responsible for their deaths exposed, and I want to stop this network before they get more soldiers killed. Ethan exhaled, realizing the scale of what she wanted to take on. That's a tall order. You're talking about confronting some extremely powerful individuals. I know, she said, her voice steady. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try. Dylan had a family waiting for him. Vargas was supposed to get married. Dalton wanted out to become a teacher. They deserved better than dying in a desert to protect traitors' profits. Ethan heard the pain buried in her determination. He knew that feeling, losing good people who never deserved their fate, though never due to betrayal from within. If I agree to help, he said carefully, we have to be smart. These people have reach and resources we can't even guess at. One wrong step and we're both dead." Lena nodded. "I've survived 2 years by being careful. I've got safe houses, alternate identities, escape paths, all mapped out." "Then tell me about the network," Ethan said. "Who are the key players?" Lena flipped open her notebook and pointed to a name. "The center of it all is Colonel Richard Hale. He's stationed at the Pentagon and has access to global special operations planning." Ethan recognized Hale immediately. Decorated, influential, and widely seen as a rising star in military intelligence. "Working with him," she continued, "is Gavin Mercer, a defense contractor tied to major weapons manufacturers. His company has pulled in billions in contracts over the past few years," she went on, listing several other officers, intel operatives, and civilian intermediaries. The scale of it all was overwhelming. They had been selling everything from troop locations to weapons routes, and in some cases had even sabotaged missions to silence anyone who got too close. Ethan flipped through the names again, already running scenarios in his head. "Your notes alone won't be enough to bring them down. We'll need solid proof, documents, recordings, financial trails." Lena let out a grim half-smile. "I've been collecting evidence for 2 years. The notebook is just the overview. I have terabytes of data hidden across the country. Safety deposit boxes, cloud accounts under aliases, and physical caches only I can track down. I learned my lesson after they found my first safe house." Ethan couldn't help being impressed. Her operational security was tight, professional, seasoned. "So, how do we get to this evidence without setting off alarms?" he asked. "Carefully," she replied. "Some I can grab remotely, but the most damaging files require me to be there in person." Ethan leaned back in his chair, weighing their options. "I've got people inside different agencies, folks who handle internal investigations, and who I trust enough to get this evidence into the right hands. The issue is the timing." Lena had already warned him the network was fully active, and every day they hesitated meant more compromised missions and more soldiers at risk, but rushing in blind would almost guarantee they'd be silenced before they exposed anything. Lena moved to the window, watching the shooters outside cycle through their drills. "There's something else," she said quietly. "I think they've figured out I'm still alive." A cold jolt hit Ethan. "What makes you think that?" "For months, I've noticed shadows. Cars trailing me, strangers asking too many questions where I've been staying. Nothing I can prove, but enough to make me uneasy. If they've been tracking me, it's only a matter of time." "Then why haven't they made a move?" Ethan asked. Lena turned back toward him. "Because they don't know how much I've uncovered or who I might have talked to. They can't risk killing me until they're sure." And suddenly, Ethan understood exactly why she had sought him out. Yes, she needed his clearances and his contacts, but she also needed protection from people who would kill to keep their secrets buried. "If they've got eyes on you," he said, "showing up here was dangerous. Showing what you can do was even riskier." "I know," Lena admitted, "but I can't do this alone anymore. 2 years of isolation. It wears you down. I needed help, even if it meant taking chances." Ethan made a decision he knew would alter the course of both their lives. "All right, I'll help you, but we do it my way. Tight security and careful planning." Relief washed over Lena's face. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan warned. "What we're stepping into is deadly. If they catch us, we won't just disappear. They'll make sure it looks like an accident." Lena's expression hardened again. "I know the risks. I've lived with them every day for 2 years." Ethan crossed the room, opened his safe, and took out a secure satellite phone along with several other pieces of gear. "First order of business is getting you somewhere safer. I've got a secure location where you can stay while we plan." "I appreciate it," Lena said, "but I've learned to depend on my own setups." Ethan shook his head. "Lena, you've done unbelievably well staying alive and gathering intel, but you're not invulnerable. These people have reach you can't imagine. You need backup." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but I keep my own exit plans and communication lines." "Deal. Now, let's figure out how to dismantle this network." As they started laying out their strategy, neither of them noticed the tiny surveillance drone hovering just outside the window, silently recording everything. Miles away, in a secured operations room, Colonel Richard Hale watched the feed with growing alarm. The operative he believed dead for 2 years had resurfaced. And worse, she'd found a capable ally. Hale grabbed his encrypted phone and dialed a number he had hoped he'd never need again. "We have a problem," he said. "Carter is alive, and she's talking." The voice on the other end responded with icy calm. "Understood. Initiate containment protocol. No survivors." Hale ended the call and stared at the paused image of Lena and Ethan. He had wiped out her entire team 2 years earlier to shield the network. Now he would have to finish the job. But this time, he wouldn't underestimate Sergeant Lena Carter. 3 days later, Ethan arrived at Ridgecrest Valley earlier than usual. He'd spent the night combing through Lena's files and contacting trusted sources, and everything he learned only confirmed how deep the conspiracy went. Lena was already at her lane, but something in her demeanor had changed. She moved with sharper awareness, her gaze flicking toward the parking lot again and again. "You feel it too?" Ethan asked as he approached. Lena kept her eyes on the tree line. "We're being watched, have been since yesterday." Ethan had spotted the surveillance team too, seasoned operators keeping just enough distance while still keeping both him and Lena firmly in sight. "How long until they make a move?" he murmured. "Soon," Lena replied, giving her weapon one last check. "They're probably waiting for us to lead them to the evidence or expose someone else connected to it." Ethan had expected this moment, and had spent the previous day quietly preparing. "I lined up some backup, people I trust, people who know exactly what we're up against." Before he could finish, his encrypted phone buzzed. One glance at the message made his pulse spike. "What happened?" Lena asked, reading his expression. "My FBI contact is missing," Ethan said. "Agent Laura Kane was supposed to meet us tomorrow to verify your files. Her supervisor says she never made it home last night." Lena's face drained of color. "They're scrubbing the board, eliminating anyone who might help us blow this open." Ethan nodded grimly. "Which means we have to move faster. If we wait any longer, there won't be anyone left to bring this to." As if on cue, his phone rang. The caller ID flashed the name of one of the few people in the Pentagon he genuinely trusted, General Martin Cole. "Ethan," Cole said the moment the call connected, skipping greetings. "Listen closely. There's chatter about a national security threat tied to someone at your location. You need to leave. Now." "What kind of chatter?" Ethan asked. "The kind that suggests someone is about to be neutralized under the pretext of preventing a terrorist attack. Whatever you've stepped into, you're in serious danger." Ethan looked at Lena. Her expression made it obvious she had already pieced it together. "Thanks for the warning, Martin," Ethan said. "I owe you. Just stay alive and watch who you trust." The line went dead. Ethan didn't waste a second. He started packing gear. "We're moving. They're on their way." Lena already had her bag in hand. "Your car or mine?" "Neither. I've got an extraction plan." Ethan guided her across the range toward a maintenance building tucked near the property line. Even from a distance, he spotted unmarked vehicles rolling into the lot. "They're here," Lena whispered. Ethan clicked a small device on his keychain, and within minutes a helicopter rose over the hills, piloted by an old military buddy who now flew private charters. "That's our ride," Ethan said, as armed men piled out of the vehicles. They sprinted toward the landing zone, but before they reached it, gunfire exploded from the tree line. Lena instantly dropped behind a concrete barrier and opened fire with surgical precision. "Years of training," Ethan muttered as he watched her drop multiple targets. "Delta Force doesn't train you to miss," Lena replied, putting 2 more attackers down with clean, controlled shots. Ethan returned, covering fire as they pushed toward the chopper, but enemy operators were closing in fast from every direction. The situation was deteriorating by the second. "Ethan, I count at least 12 hostiles," the pilot, Mac, called over the radio. "This is getting ugly." "Give us 60 seconds, Mac," Ethan answered, unleashing suppressive fire. Suddenly, Lena grabbed his arm. "Wait, look at their gear and how they're moving." Ethan studied the attackers more closely. Their weapons, their formations, their tactics, everything screamed professional military. "These aren't mercenaries," Lena said. "These are active-duty special forces." The realization hit Ethan like a punch. The conspiracy wasn't just selling secrets. They were deploying real military units to erase threats. "My own people are trying to kill us," he muttered bitterly. "Not your people," Lena corrected. "Traitors wearing your uniform." Then a new voice crackled over Ethan's radio, one that chilled him instantly. "Commander Ward, this is Colonel Hale. Stand down immediately and surrender the terrorist." Ethan recognized Hale's voice from old Pentagon briefings. "Lena Carter isn't a terrorist, Colonel," he snapped back. "She's a decorated soldier who uncovered your operation," Ethan fired back. On the other end, Colonel Hale let out a cold, dismissive laugh. "Sergeant Carter died 2 years ago. The woman beside you is an enemy plant using her identity. You're aiding a national security threat, Commander." Before Ethan could respond, Lena snatched the radio from his hand. "Colonel Hale, this is Sergeant First Class Lena Carter. Service number 123456789. You murdered my team to hide your treason. I lived, and now I'm coming for you and everyone involved." The radio went dead silent for several seconds. Then Hale's voice returned, flat and merciless. "Eliminate them both." Gunfire surged instantly, louder and heavier, and Ethan knew they were almost out of ammunition and time. "Mac, we need extraction now," he shouted into the radio. "I'm coming in," the pilot replied, "but I can't stay long." As the helicopter swept closer, Lena turned to Ethan with a look that told him she'd already made up her mind. "Ethan, there's something in my bag." She pulled out a small encrypted device, military grade, ruggedized, unmistakably important. "This is everything. Financial trails, intercepted communications, video files, enough to bury the entire network." Ethan took it, but she didn't let go. "I need a promise," she said quietly. "If I don't make it out, get this to General Cole. He's clean. I checked him myself." "We're both getting out," Ethan insisted. Lena gave a tired, sad smile. "Look around. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Somebody has to buy you enough time to get that evidence out." Before Ethan could react, she grabbed her rifle and loaded her remaining ammo. "Tell my story," she said. "Tell them what really happened to my team." Then she rose from cover and moved toward the attackers with the calm certainty of someone who had accepted her fate. Her rifle thundered as she advanced, each shot precise, forcing trained operators to scramble for cover. Ethan watched, stunned, as Lena single-handedly held off more than a dozen elite fighters. Her movements were controlled, elegant, terrifying, every step planned, every trigger pull intentional. "Commander, we have to go," Mac shouted from the helicopter. Ethan knew Lena's stand would mean nothing if he didn't escape with the evidence. With a heavy heart, he sprinted for the chopper while Lena continued her one-woman assault. As the aircraft lifted off, Ethan saw her take a round and falter, but she pushed forward, firing, moving, refusing to fall. Even wounded, she was more dangerous than most soldiers at full strength. Trees blocked his view as they gained altitude, though the sound of gunfire echoed on for several minutes before tapering into silence. "Is she?" Mac asked. "I don't know," Ethan said, gripping the encrypted drive tightly. "But she gave us what we needed." 2 hours later, Ethan stood in General Martin Cole's Pentagon office, presenting Lena's evidence to a hand-picked group of military investigators and FBI officials. Cole flipped through the financial documents, his expression darkening. "This is enormous," he said. "If this is legitimate, it exposes betrayal at the highest levels." "It's legitimate," Ethan confirmed. "Lena spent 2 years gathering it, risked her life every day." Agent Elena Ruiz of the FBI lifted her head from a stack of communication intercepts. These recordings clearly showed direct coordination between military personnel and foreign operatives, Agent Ruiz said. "This alone can take down the entire network." In the weeks that followed, sweeping arrests hit both the military and multiple defense contractors. Colonel Hale and 17 others were taken into custody, and investigators soon realized the betrayal ran even deeper than Lena had uncovered. Ethan later testified in closed congressional sessions, detailing Lena's investigation and the sacrifice she'd made. Her name was cleared, and she was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for extraordinary bravery. Yet Ethan never fully accepted that she had died on that hillside. Her body had never been found, and he knew firsthand how capable and stubborn she could be. 3 months after everything went down at Ridgecrest Valley, Ethan received an encrypted message through a secure military channel. "Thank you for keeping your promise. The work continues. S." A quiet smile crossed his face. Somewhere out there, Lena Carter was still doing what she'd always done, fighting the battles most people never knew existed, protecting the country she'd nearly died for. Ethan walked to the window of his Pentagon office and looked out at the American flag drifting in the breeze. Because of one woman's courage, it felt like it flew a little cleaner, a little brighter. Later, at the Arlington Cemetery, Ethan placed flowers on a memorial stone that read, "Sergeant First Class Lena Carter, a true American hero who gave everything for honor." As he stepped away, a woman in civilian clothes approached the marker. Her hair carried streaks of gray now, and fresh scars traced her hands, but the fire in her eyes hadn't dimmed. Lena brushed her fingers across the nameplate, then slipped silently back into the passing crowd. She still had promises to keep, justice to deliver, and the memory of fallen teammates to honor. Her fight wasn't over. It might never be. But as long as people like Lena Carter and Ethan Ward existed, honor would endure, and justice, slow as it might be, would finally find its way. In the distance, a 21-gun salute echoed as another hero was laid to rest with full military honors. Lena paused to salute before fading into the shadows once more, carrying with her the weight of truth and the resolve to defend her country in ways few would ever understand. The quiet war was only just beginning, but its defenders were ready,